Help! My own son is killing me! That's what I screamed to the 911 operator as I collapsed on my kitchen floor. My vision blurring, my heart racing at 180 beats per minute. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the phone. Through the ringing in my ears, I could hear my 56-year-old son David in the next room, calmly telling his gambling buddies on the phone, "Don't worry, she'll be dead soon. Then I'll have access to all her accounts." He thought I couldn't hear him. He thought I was unconscious. He thought his plan was working perfectly. The paramedics found my blood pressure pills hidden inside David's sock drawer. The medication that could have saved my life, locked away while he waited for me to die. The pills I'd been begging him to help me get for 3 weeks, while he looked me in the eye and said, "Sorry, Mom, I'm too busy." But I'm not dead. I'm Sylvia Martin, 83 years old from Detroit, and I just sent my own son to prison for trying to murder me for my pension money. In 6 months, I went from dying on my kitchen floor to watching him get dragged away in handcuffs on live television. This is the story of how my son tried to kill me slowly and how I made him pay for it in front of the entire state of Michigan. Because sometimes the only way to get justice is to drag your family's darkest secrets into the brightest courtroom lights. You think you know what family betrayal looks like? You have no idea. I should have known something was wrong the day I found my late husband's wedding ring missing from my jewelry box. Not stolen, sold. For $200 at a pawn shop on Corktown, according to the receipt I discovered crumpled in David's jacket pocket. My son had sold his father's wedding ring to pay for poker chips. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was when I confronted him, tears streaming down my face, holding that pawn shop receipt. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Dad's dead, Mom. He doesn't need it anymore. But I need to eat." That should have been my wake-up call. Instead, I gave him $500 cash and made him promise to buy the ring back. He never did. For 43 years, I was head treasurer at Detroit Metropolitan Bank. I caught embezzlers. I flagged fraudulent transactions. I sent criminals to prison for stealing from accounts. I was the woman who could spot a forged signature from across the room, who could detect suspicious patterns in financial records that other people missed completely. Yet somehow, I couldn't see that my own son was planning the perfect crime, one that would leave me not just broke, but dead. It started small after his father died. David would visit every Sunday, bringing grocery store flowers and asking how I was managing all these confusing financial things. He'd sit at my kitchen table, watching me write checks for utilities, memorizing my account numbers, studying my routine like a predator studies prey. "Mom, you're getting older," he'd say with fake concern. "What if you forget to pay a bill? What if someone takes advantage of you?" Then he'd pause, letting that fear sink in. "I think you should add my name to your accounts. You know, just for protection." The irony is suffocating now. I was so afraid of strangers stealing from me that I willingly handed my life savings to the person who was actually planning to rob me blind. Within 6 months of getting access to my accounts, David had withdrawn $127,000, my entire life savings. But he didn't just steal my money. He stole my medicine money. He stole my grocery money. He stole my dignity, making me beg him for rides to the pharmacy while he sat in my living room, spending my retirement fund on online gambling sites. The last time I asked him to drive me to get my blood pressure medication, he didn't even look up from his phone. Maybe later, Mom. I'm busy. That was 3 weeks before I collapsed on my kitchen floor, calling 911, begging someone to save me from my own child. 3 weeks without my blood pressure medication. That's how long David let me suffer while he spent my money at Motor City Casino, watching me get weaker every day, knowing exactly what he was doing. But I didn't realize he was plotting something even worse. It started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. I was in the bathroom when David's cell phone rang in my living room. Through the thin walls of my 1950s house, I heard him answer with a voice I'd never heard before. Cold, calculating, businesslike. "Yeah, she's getting worse," he said to someone. "Blood pressure's through the roof. Can barely walk to the mailbox. Give it another week, maybe two." My blood ran cold. I pressed my ear against the bathroom door. No, no, I can't just take her to the hospital. Too many questions. This way looks natural. Old lady, high blood pressure, living alone. Happens all the time. There was a pause. Then David laughed. A sound that made my skin crawl. "Trust me, by Christmas, I'll have full access to everything. The house, the pension, the insurance money. We're talking at least $300,000 total." Insurance money. He was talking about my life insurance policy. I stumbled backward, my hands shaking. My own son wasn't just stealing from me. He was waiting for me to die. Worse, he was helping it happen by keeping me from my medication. But that conversation was just the beginning. Over the next week, I started paying attention to things I'd ignored before. The way David would pocket my mail before I could see it. How he'd mysteriously appear whenever a neighbor stopped by, cutting conversations short. The way he'd started bringing his girlfriend Karen over, and they'd sit at my kitchen table, whispering and pointing at my financial papers. Then I overheard the second conversation. This time, I was pretending to nap on the couch when Karen called. "She's suspicious," David whispered. "Keeps asking about her bank statements. I think she knows something." "So what do we do?" I heard him ask, apparently listening to Karen's response. "Speed things up? How?" Another pause. "You want me to what?" "Karen, that's too risky." But then his voice changed, became eager. "Actually, you know what? You're right. The nursing home angle is perfect. If I can get her declared incompetent, I get power of attorney immediately. No waiting for her to die, no suspicious circumstances. Just a sad old lady who can't take care of herself anymore." I heard him walking around my living room, pacing like a caged animal. I already planted the seed with Dr. Morrison last month. Told him she's been forgetting things, getting confused. If she ends up in the ER again without her meds, all I have to do is tell them she's been having memory problems, maybe some dementia episodes. They'll recommend a psych evaluation and boom, incompetent. I'll have legal control of everything. That's when I realized David wasn't just planning to let me die. He was planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could legally steal everything I owned while keeping me locked in a nursing home until I actually did die. My son wasn't just a thief. He was a predator, and I was his prey. David's plan went into motion the very next week, and it was more vicious than I could have imagined. It started at Kroger grocery store on a busy Saturday morning. I was in the cereal aisle when I heard David's voice behind me, talking loudly to the store manager. "I'm so sorry," he was saying, his voice dripping with fake concern. "My mom's been having these episodes lately. Yesterday, she tried to pay for groceries with Monopoly money. Last week, she called the police because she thought strangers were living in her house. But it was just me and my girlfriend visiting. I spun around, my mouth falling open. The store manager, Mrs. Henderson, who'd known me for 15 years, was looking at me with pity and confusion. "Oh, Sylvia," she said gently, like she was talking to a child. "Are you feeling all right today, honey?" "I'm fine," I snapped, but I could see other customers starting to stare. "David, what are you telling people?" David put his arm around my shoulders, squeezing just a little too tight. "Mom, we talked about this. Dr. Morrison said these confused episodes are normal for someone your age. Nothing to be embarrassed about. But I never had any confused episodes. And Dr. Morrison never said anything like that." That's when I realized David wasn't just planning to have me declared incompetent. He was actively building a public case for it, making sure everyone in our neighborhood would witness my supposed mental decline. The humiliation got worse. At church the following Sunday, David stood up during prayer requests and asked the congregation to pray for his mother's deteriorating condition. He told them I'd been wandering the neighborhood at night in my pajamas, that I'd forgotten how to use the stove and nearly burned the house down. None of it was true, but 60 people heard him say it, and I watched their faces change as they looked at me. Suddenly, I wasn't Sylvia Martin, the sharp retired banker who balanced the church books for 20 years. I was the crazy old lady whose son was such a saint for taking care of her. Pastor Williams even pulled me aside after service. "Sylvia, if you need help, if you're struggling with memory issues, there are resources. David's told us you've been having some difficulties." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them all that David was lying, that he was stealing from me, that he was trying to drive me crazy. But who would believe me? A confused old woman with memory problems versus her devoted son who was so concerned about her welfare. The worst part came when David invited my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, over for coffee. I thought it was a social visit until I heard him in my kitchen, speaking in that same fake, concerned voice. "She's been hiding food in strange places," he was telling her. "I found moldy bread in her bedroom closet, canned soup under the bathroom sink, and she keeps insisting that people are stealing from her, but she just misplaces things." Through my bedroom door, I could hear Mrs. Patterson's shocked responses. "Oh my goodness, David. That sounds like dementia symptoms." "That's what the doctor thinks too," David replied smoothly. "We're looking into memory care facilities. Somewhere she'll be safe, you know? Somewhere professionals can watch her 24/7. Mrs. Patterson had been my friend for 8 years. We'd shared coffee every Tuesday morning, talked about our grandchildren, complained about the weather. Now she was nodding along as my son painted me as a dangerous, demented old woman who needed to be locked away. That night, as I lay in bed listening to David on the phone with yet another person, spreading more lies about my mental state, I finally understood the full scope of his plan. He wasn't just going to steal my money and have me declared incompetent. He was systematically destroying my reputation, my relationships, and my credibility, so that when the time came to have me committed, everyone would think he was doing the right thing. My son wasn't just trying to rob me. He was trying to erase me completely. The breaking point came on a cold Thursday morning in November, and it nearly killed me. Literally. I woke up feeling dizzy, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. It had been 4 weeks since my last blood pressure pill, and my body was shutting down. I managed to drag myself to the kitchen phone and call David. Please, I whispered, barely able to speak. I need my medication. I can't breathe properly. Mom, I told you, I'm busy today, he said dismissively. Maybe tomorrow. David, I think I'm having a medical emergency. You're fine. You're just being dramatic. And he hung up. I called back immediately. This time, Karen answered David's phone. Listen, old lady, she said, her voice sharp and cruel. David's done playing games with you. You want your pills? Then sign the power of attorney papers. Otherwise, you can suffer. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. You're You're both trying to kill me. Karen laughed. Actually laughed. Nobody's trying to kill you, Sylvia. We're just letting nature take its course. Old people die all the time from high blood pressure. Sad, but natural. That's when I heard David's voice in the background. And what he said next destroyed whatever was left of my heart. Tell her the nursing home called back, David said to Karen, loud enough for me to hear. Tell her Sunset Manor has a bed available in their memory care unit. Once she signs over power of attorney, we can have her committed by next week. Did you hear that, Sylvia? Karen's voice was poisonous. David's already filled out the paperwork. Dr. Morrison signed off on it. Apparently, you've been showing signs of severe dementia for months. Funny how nobody else noticed. But doctors know best, right? I was gasping for air now, my vision blurring at the edges. And here's the beautiful part, Karen continued, clearly enjoying my terror. Once you're in memory care, David gets immediate access to everything. Your house, your accounts, your life insurance, and the best part, memory care patients don't get visitors very often. Sometimes they just fade away, forgotten. David, I managed to whisper. David, please, I'm your mother. I heard him take the phone from Karen. You were my mother, he said, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. Now you're just a bank account with legs. And honestly, I'm tired of waiting for you to die naturally. So here's what's going to happen, Mom. You're going to sign those papers. You're going to get in that van to Sunset Manor, and you're going to disappear. Because if you don't, I'll make sure your last days are so miserable, you'll beg me to put you out of your misery. The phone line went quiet for a moment. Then David added the words that finally broke me completely. Face it, Mom. Nobody cares about you except for your money. Not your neighbors, not your church friends, not me. You're just a useless old woman taking up space. At least this way, your death will finally serve a purpose. I dropped the phone. My legs gave out. I collapsed onto my kitchen floor, my heart racing so fast I thought it would explode. That's when I called 911, screaming into the phone that my own son was killing me. But as I lay there waiting for the ambulance, I made a decision that would change everything. David wanted to destroy me quietly, privately, making me disappear without a trace. I was going to make sure the whole world watched him fall. The paramedics found me conscious, but barely breathing, my blood pressure at stroke levels. As they loaded me into the ambulance, I saw David standing on my front porch, not rushing to help, not even looking concerned. He was on his phone, probably calling Karen to update her on the timeline. At Detroit Receiving Hospital, Dr. Harris saved my life with emergency medication and kept me for observation. That's when I met the person who would help me destroy David's plan completely. Social worker Janet Williams walked into my room with a clipboard and a gentle smile. Mrs. Martin, the hospital is required to investigate when elderly patients come in with medication related emergencies. Can you tell me why you hadn't been taking your blood pressure pills? I could have lied. I could have protected David like I'd been doing for months. Instead, I looked Janet in the eye and said, because my son has been deliberately keeping them from me while he steals my life savings. Janet's pen stopped moving. I'm sorry, what? So, I told her everything. The missing medication, the stolen money, the overheard phone calls about insurance payouts and nursing home plans. I told her about the fake dementia stories David had been spreading around the neighborhood, the power of attorney papers he'd forged, Dr. Morrison's supposed diagnosis that I'd never heard directly. But I also told her something else, something I'd been thinking about during those long, painful weeks when David was slowly killing me. I have recordings, I said quietly. Janet looked up sharply. Recordings? I smiled for the first time in months. My late husband bought me one of those digital recorders for Christmas 5 years ago. Said I should record family stories for posterity. I've been carrying it in my sweater pocket for weeks, recording every conversation, every phone call I could overhear. The truth was, I'd started recording everything after that first overheard conversation about waiting for me to die. Call it banker's instinct. Document everything, trust no one, keep evidence of every transaction, even when the transaction was my own son planning my murder. Mrs. Martin, Janet said carefully, are you saying you have recorded evidence of your son planning to harm you financially and physically? 5 hours of recordings, I confirmed. David talking to Karen about insurance money. Karen threatening to let me die without medication. David calling Dr. Morrison and lying about my mental state. David on the phone with Sunset Manor, arranging my commitment to memory care. Janet was writing furiously now. Mrs. Martin, this is elder abuse on multiple levels. Financial exploitation, physical neglect, psychological manipulation. With recordings like that, I know exactly what it is, I said firmly. I spent 43 years investigating financial crimes. I know evidence when I see it, and I know exactly what I want to do with it. Janet leaned forward. What do you want to do? I want to prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. I want everyone who heard David's lies about my mental state to see the truth. I want the whole state of Michigan to know what my son tried to do to me. I paused, thinking about Karen's cruel laughter, about David calling me a bank account with legs. But most of all, I continued, I want David to experience the same public humiliation he put me through. I want him to stand in front of a courtroom full of people and explain why he tried to murder his 83-year-old mother for her pension money. Janet nodded slowly. Mrs. Martin, I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared for this to be a very public case? Elder abuse prosecutions in Michigan often get media attention, especially when family members are involved. I thought about all those people at church who'd looked at me with pity. I thought about Mrs. Patterson, who'd believed David's lies about me hiding food and forgetting things. I thought about the grocery store manager treating me like a confused child. Good, I said. I want it to be public. I want everyone to see exactly what kind of man my son really is. That night, while David probably thought I was dying alone in a hospital bed, I was actually meeting with Detective Rodriguez from the Detroit Police Department's Elder Abuse Unit, Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen, and Elder Law Attorney Marcus Blake. By morning, I had a team. By afternoon, we had a plan. David thought he was hunting a helpless old woman. He had no idea he'd been hunting a retired bank investigator who'd just declared war. David thought I was dying in a hospital bed. Instead, I was planning his destruction from my discharge wheelchair. Attorney Marcus Blake moved fast. Within 48 hours of leaving the hospital, we had filed a restraining order against David, frozen all joint accounts, and submitted my recordings to the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office. But that was just the beginning. The real shock came when Detective Rodriguez and two patrol officers showed up at my house on Friday morning to arrest David for felony elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. I watched from my living room window as David was led out in handcuffs, his face red with rage and confusion. He kept looking back at my house, probably wondering how his demented mother had managed to outmaneuver him so completely. But the best part? Mrs. Patterson and half the neighborhood were outside watching. The same people who'd listened to David's lies about my mental state were now watching him get arrested for trying to kill me. "What's happening?" Mrs. Patterson called out to the officers. "David Martin is being charged with elder abuse and financial exploitation of his mother," Detective Rodriguez announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We have recorded evidence of him deliberately withholding medication and planning to defraud Mrs. Martin of her life savings." I saw Mrs. Patterson's face go white. She looked toward my window, and I gave her a little wave. The same sweet wave I'd given her every Tuesday morning before David convinced her I was losing my mind. Phase 2 hit David even harder. Attorney Blake had requested an emergency court hearing to review David's claims about my mental competency. Dr. Morrison, the same doctor David claimed had diagnosed me with dementia, was subpoenaed to testify. The hearing was held the following Tuesday at Wayne County Courthouse. David showed up with a public defender, expecting to convince a judge that I was mentally unfit and that everything he'd done was for my own protection. He wasn't expecting me to walk into that courtroom completely lucid, accompanied by 3 lawyers, a social worker, and carrying a digital recorder full of evidence. Judge Patterson, no relation to my neighbor, listened to the recordings with a stone-cold expression. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the case, and local news crews were filming everything. When Dr. Morrison took the stand, the truth came out like a dam bursting. "Dr. Morrison," Blake asked, "did you ever diagnose Sylvia Martin with dementia or any form of cognitive impairment?" "No, I did not." "Did you ever recommend that she be placed in memory care?" "Absolutely not. Mrs. Martin's cognitive function has always been excellent." "Did David Martin ever call you to discuss his mother's supposed mental decline?" Dr. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, he called several times. He claimed Mrs. Martin was showing signs of confusion and memory loss. I told him to bring her in for evaluation, but he never did." "And did you ever sign paperwork recommending memory care for Mrs. Martin?" "I certainly did not. If such paperwork exists with my signature, it's fraudulent." The courtroom erupted. David's face went from red to gray as Blake played the recording of him telling Karen that Dr. Morrison signed off on it. But the most devastating moment came when Blake played the recording of David's final phone call to me. the one where he called me a bank account with legs and told me nobody cared about me except for my money. You could have heard a pin drop in that courtroom. When the recording ended, Judge Patterson looked at David with pure disgust. "Mr. Martin," she said, "I've heard a lot of disturbing things in my courtroom, but listening to a son tell his dying mother that her death would finally serve a purpose ranks among the most heinous. Not only are all charges against you proceeding to trial, but I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. You are not to come within 500 feet of your mother, her home, or any of her assets." The gavel came down like thunder, but I wasn't done yet. As David was led away by bailiffs, I stood up and spoke loud enough for every reporter and camera to hear. "David, you wanted everyone to think I was a confused old lady who couldn't take care of herself. Well, I just took care of you." The camera flashes were blinding. By that evening, my story was leading the local news. By morning, it had gone viral across Michigan's social media. The confused old lady David tried to destroy had just destroyed him instead, and the whole state was watching. The first thing I did after David's arrest was buy myself a proper blood pressure monitor and a month's supply of medication. Not because I needed David's help, but because I finally could take care of myself without someone actively trying to kill me. The second thing I did was change all my locks. The media attention was overwhelming at first. Fox 2. Detroit wanted interviews. Local newspapers called daily, and my story was shared thousands of times on Facebook. But instead of hiding from it, I embraced it. Every interview was a chance to warn other elderly people about the signs of financial abuse, to share what I'd learned about protecting yourself from family predators. Trust, but verify, I told Channel 7's morning show. I spent 43 years telling bank customers that blood doesn't make someone trustworthy. I should have listened to my own advice. The interview went viral. Within a week, I was getting calls from adult protective services agencies across Michigan, asking me to speak at conferences about elder abuse prevention. Me, the woman David tried to have declared incompetent, was now being recognized as an expert witness. But the most healing part of my recovery was reconnecting with my community. Mrs. Patterson was the first to apologize, showing up at my door with homemade cookies and tears in her eyes. "Sylvia, I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have known David was lying. You've always been sharp as a tack. I let him manipulate me into doubting you." "Helen," I told her, using her first name for the first time in 8 years. "David fooled a lot of people. He was very good at what he did." One by one, my neighbors came by to apologize. The grocery store manager sent flowers. Pastor Williams asked me to speak at church about forgiveness and resilience. The same people who'd pitied me as a confused old woman now looked at me with respect and admiration. I started volunteering at the Wayne County Elder Abuse Prevention Center, helping other seniors recognize the warning signs of financial exploitation. My banking background made me perfect for teaching people how to protect their accounts, how to spot forged documents, how to keep records that could hold up in court. Most surprisingly, I discovered I loved public speaking. At 83 years old, I was traveling around Michigan, telling my story to packed auditoriums, teaching seniors how to fight back against predators. The woman David tried to silence was now using her voice to protect thousands of others. My health improved dramatically once the stress of David's abuse was gone. My blood pressure stabilized, I gained back the weight I'd lost, and I started sleeping through the night for the first time in months. Dr. Harris, the emergency room doctor who'd saved my life, became my regular physician and marveled at my recovery. "Sylvia," he said during a checkup, "your vitals are better now than they were when you were under constant stress." It's amazing what removing a toxic situation can do for someone's health. I also made new friends, real friends, not people who pitied me or wanted something from me. At the senior center where I taught financial literacy classes, I met Margaret, a retired teacher whose daughter had tried to steal her house. We bonded over war stories and started having weekly coffee dates, laughing about how we'd both outsmarted our scheming children. The funny thing, Margaret told me one Tuesday morning, is that our kids thought we were helpless because we were old. They forgot that we lived through decades they can't even imagine. We know how to survive things they've never faced. She was right. David had underestimated me because he saw wrinkles and gray hair instead of decades of experience investigating financial crimes. He thought age made me weak. Instead, it had made me wise enough to recognize his game and strong enough to play it better than he ever could. 6 months after David's arrest, I was featured on the cover of Michigan Senior Monthly Magazine. The headline read, "The 83-year-old who fought back." In the photo, I'm standing in front of Wayne County Courthouse, holding the digital recorder that captured David's confession. I looked at that magazine cover and realized something profound. David had tried to erase me, to make me disappear into a nursing home where I'd be forgotten. Instead, his crimes had made me more visible, more influential, and more purposeful than I'd ever been. At 83 years old, I was finally living my life for myself, not for someone else's expectations or manipulation. And it felt incredible. David's trial was held 8 months after his arrest, and it was everything I'd hoped it would be: a complete and total public reckoning. The Wayne County Courthouse was packed again, this time with even more media coverage. National news outlets had picked up the story, calling it "the case that shocked Michigan" and "when elder abuse backfires." David walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his confident smirk replaced by the hollow stare of a man who knew he was about to lose everything. Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen was ruthless. She played every recording, displayed every forged document, and called witness after witness who testified about David's lies regarding my mental state. The jury, 12 people ranging from their 30s to their 60s, looked physically sick as they listened to David planning my death for insurance money. The most devastating moment came when they played the recording of David, calling me a bank account with legs. You could hear people in the gallery gasp. Two jurors were visibly crying. When David took the stand in his own defense, he tried to claim everything was a misunderstanding, that he was just trying to help me manage my affairs. But under cross-examination, his story fell apart completely. "Mr. Martin," Chen asked, "can you explain why helping your mother manage her affairs required hiding her life-saving medication?" David had no answer. "Can you explain why helping your mother required telling your entire church congregation that she was wandering the streets in her pajamas?" Silence. "Can you explain why helping your mother required planning her commitment to a memory care facility based on a medical diagnosis that never existed?" David's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. guilty on all counts: elder abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted Medicaid fraud. Judge Patterson sentenced him to 7 years in state prison and ordered him to pay full restitution. Every penny he'd stolen, plus damages, plus court costs. But the real justice came in the aftermath. Karen, David's girlfriend and co-conspirator, was arrested 3 days later when investigators discovered she'd been running similar scams on two other elderly victims in Detroit. She got 5 years and her own place on the Michigan Attorney General's Elder Predator Watch List. Dr. Morrison lost his medical license for failing to report suspected elder abuse and for allowing David to use his name on fraudulent documents. The nursing home David had contacted about committing me launched an internal investigation and tightened their admission procedures to prevent future fraud. The ripple effects extended far beyond David's punishment. Michigan passed new legislation requiring multiple medical opinions before anyone could be involuntarily committed for dementia. Banks implemented new protocols for large withdrawals from elderly customers' accounts. Adult Protective Services received increased funding for elder abuse investigations. My story became a case study in law schools and social work programs across the country. The recordings I'd made were used to train police officers how to recognize elder abuse. The digital recorder that saved my life was donated to the Detroit Historical Museum as part of an exhibit on senior advocacy. But perhaps the most satisfying justice was personal. 6 months after David's sentencing, I received a letter from him in prison. He wanted to apologize, to explain, to somehow make me understand his desperation and gambling addiction. I read the letter once, then threw it in the trash without responding. Because here's what I learned during those months when David was slowly killing me. Forgiveness is not something you owe to people who have shown you no mercy. Reconciliation is not required when someone has tried to erase your existence. And family is not defined by shared blood. It's defined by shared respect, love, and protection. David showed me none of those things. The people who did, my new friends, my legal team, the strangers who heard my story and reached out with support, those people became my real family. At 84 years old, I finally understood something that had taken me 8 decades to learn. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to accept abuse because it comes from family. And you don't have to die quietly to spare other people's feelings. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to fight back, even when everyone expects you to just fade away. Looking back, I'm almost grateful for what David put me through. Not because I enjoyed the pain, but because surviving his betrayal taught me how strong I really was. It showed me that at any age, at any stage of life, you can choose to stop being a victim and start being a victor. David wanted to bury me in a nursing home and steal my legacy. Instead, his crimes created a legacy more powerful than anything I could have planned. A story that protects other seniors, changes laws, and proves that it's never too late to refuse to be anyone's victim. He tried to make me disappear. Instead, he made me unforgettable. If you're watching this story and you're over 60, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What happened to me is happening to someone you know right now. Maybe it's happening to you. Elder abuse is not rare. It's not something that only happens to other people or confused seniors. According to the National Council on Aging, 1 in 10 Americans aged 60 and older has experienced some form of elder abuse. Most of it, 60%, is committed by family members, sons, daughters, grandchildren, spouses. The people we trust most are often the ones planning to destroy us. Here's what I want you to do today, right now, before you forget. First, trust your instincts. If someone's behavior toward you feels wrong, it probably is wrong. I ignored months of warning signs because I didn't want to believe my own son was capable of such evil. Don't make my mistake. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Second, document everything. Get a digital recorder, keep a journal, save every text message and email. I can't emphasize this enough. Without those recordings, David would have succeeded in having me declared incompetent and locked away. Evidence is the difference between being believed and being dismissed as a confused old person. Third, maintain your own financial independence. Never, ever give someone else complete control over your money, no matter how much you trust them. Keep your own checking account, your own credit cards, your own access to your funds. Love and trust are not the same thing as financial vulnerability. Fourth, stay connected to people outside your family. David's plan relied on isolating me, making me dependent only on him for social contact and support. The moment I reconnected with my community, his lies started falling apart. Join clubs, volunteer, make friends who see you as you really are, not as someone else wants to portray you. Fifth, know the warning signs. Someone else controlling your mail, your medication, or your money. Being told you're too old to make your own decisions. Having someone speak for you at medical appointments or social gatherings. Being isolated from friends or neighbors. These aren't signs of someone caring for you. They're signs of someone controlling you. And finally, fight back. I don't care if you're 60, 70, 80, or 90 years old. I don't care if the person abusing you is your child, your spouse, or your caregiver. You have the right to dignity, respect, and safety. You have the right to control your own life, your own money, and your own medical decisions. You have the right to say no. Don't go quietly. Don't disappear to spare other people's feelings. Don't let anyone convince you that abuse is normal just because you're aging. If someone is stealing from you, call the police. If someone is threatening you, call Adult Protective Services. If someone is trying to control you through fear or manipulation, call a lawyer. There are people who will help you, who will believe you, who will fight for you. I was 83 years old when I decided to fight back against my son's attempt to murder me for my pension money. I had high blood pressure, limited mobility, and no family support. But I had something more powerful than any of those obstacles. I had the absolute refusal to be anyone's victim. You have that same power. Age doesn't take it away. Health problems don't eliminate it. Other people's expectations don't override it. Your life has value. Your dignity matters. Your autonomy is sacred. And anyone who tries to take those things from you, family or not, deserves to face the consequences. Don't let anyone write the ending of your story. You hold the pen, use it. If my story has touched you, if it's opened your eyes or given you courage, please share it. Leave a comment telling other seniors they're not alone. Subscribe to support content that protects and empowers older adults. And remember, it's never too late to refuse to be anyone's victim. It's never too late to fight for the life you deserve. I'm Sylvia Martin. I'm 84 years old. I sent my son to prison for trying to kill me, and I've never been prouder of anything in my life. Your turn.